And a TGIF, everybody. Welcome into the Friday show. It's the First Call podcast. He's Jeff Siegel. I'm Jeremy Plonk, representing First Bet and Express Bet. We handicap 8 stakes races each weekend. We could have picked 28 this weekend. There is a lot cooking from sea to shining sea and across the pond. Of course, it's Arc de Triomphe weekend in France on Sunday. Opening day today at Keeneland. And Jeff, in your neck of the woods, just a little pick six carryover at Santa Anita today. So we've got a lot to talk about.
How refreshing. An actual large pick six carryover made possible only because we're now to the $2 minimum, which I think people are going to really dive in today and take advantage of it. I've got my analysis on expressbet.com for the entire sequence. So that we're talking about Friday now, if you are listening to this on Friday. So check that out. Always free at expressbet to members. And then you mentioned the ARC. I'll be doing a handicap of that, which will be up tomorrow. That's Saturday, and it's challenging, but I'll give it my best. Familiarize myself with some of the horses that'll be coming over from Breeders' Cup. So I don't mind doing it. I don't know how good I'll be, but I'll give it my best shot. And then, of course, we've got so many stakes races, pivotal stakes races here, not only at Santa Anita, but in New York. And then, of course, Jeremy will have us covered at Keeneland. So check out his selections and analysis for the Keeneland program. So, it's a busy week, and it's a fun kind of busy.
We're going to focus mainly on Belmont and Santa Anita for this podcast. If you are playing today at Keeneland, I'll throw a couple at you for the stakes races. In the Phoenix, I think the favorite Nakatomi looks tough in there. I'm looking for a price on Totally Justified, 6-8-1 to upset the Jessamine Stakes. And then I think it's immersive for Brad Cox and the Alcibiades. And if she wins that race, she may be the favorite now for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies because of the news that broke from Dave Grenning, Daily Racing Form, earlier this week. Senza Parole, the impressive winner from Saratoga, who was going to be 1-5 probably in the Frizette, we'll talk about a little bit later. She is out for the year now. So that Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies division wide open. Maybe Immersive takes control of that for Brad Cox today. I think he will in the Alcibiades Stakes at Keeneland. And again, 83,000 plus in the pick six carryover today at Santa Anita. Now let's get to our Saturday action. For those of you watching on YouTube and on X, be sure to like, share this out, post comments for us, help grow the audience. For those of you listening on our traditional audio channels, here are the 8 races Jeff and I are about to handicap. From Belmont at the Big A, we'll take a look at the Jockey Club Derby Invitational, the Belmont Turf Sprint, and then the 2-year-olds are in the spotlight with the Frizette for the Phillies and the Champagne for the Colts. Similar kind of races on the lineup out at Santa Anita. We will look at the Oakleaf for the 2-year-old filly division there. The Chillingworth for the Filly Mare Sprint, where Sweet Azteca may cement favoritism in that Filly Mare Sprint division with another victory. The Rodeo Drive in the Filly Mare Turf division, and then the 2-year-old Colts in the American Pharaoh stretching out around 2 turns. If you like to play handicapping tournaments, we've got you covered. A couple feeder tournaments for $100 entry fee today, both Santa Anita and Keeneland feeder tournaments. There's some big money tournaments later in the season. Those feeders also continue on Sunday. The big tournament on Saturday, if you want to qualify for the Breeders' Cup Betting Championship, look, that's a high dollar entry fee into the Breeders' Cup Betting Championship. You could earn your way there in the $1,000 super low ratio qualifier, which means there's not that many entries per how many people will qualify for the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. So your best chance to qualify for the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge will come up Saturday in that $1,000 BCBC super low ratio qualifier. Those are handicapping races from Santa Anita on Saturday. All right, Jeff, let's get started with our handicapping for the Saturday program, October 5th, coming up tomorrow at Belmont at the Big A. Mother Nature's smiling on New York this weekend. I know it's been a rough weather week in the last 7 to 10 days, all up and down the East Coast. Prayers out to those folks in the Carolinas affected and in Georgia from all the flooding. But weather looks really good for Belmont Park on Saturday, or Belmont at the Big A. 75 degrees, mostly sunny skies. So we should have excellent racing conditions. And that helps us in race number 5 at 1 3/8 on the turf. It's the Belmont Jockey Club Derby Invitational at Belmont at the Big A. They've only run this race 4 times so far. It's one of the newest races on the NYRA Stakes schedule. 2-time winner in here, Charlie Appleby, looks for a third. He's got Legend of Time, but Legend of Time has been disappointing as the beaten favorite in the last 2. Will they beat Legend of Time again? And if so, with whom?
I don't trust him. He's had a little trouble, but he seems to be the kind of colt that loses his punch under pressure. He could win, of course, but 2-1. I mean, the connections guarantee he's going to be a short price. So I'm going to try to beat Legend of Time with a colt that I think is rapidly developing, and that is a colt named Dashman. And I love his pedigree. Oscar performance out of a mare by Johar. Should run all day. This is a mile and 3/8. And Dashman, if you look at his form, there's a line after his third start, and that's the layoff line. And you can see as a 2-year-old, he was just okay. But since he came back, he's undefeated in 2 starts, broke his maiden, came back and won a very nice now as a 2 at Kentucky Downs, a true stayer, but with tactical speed. He's not a plotter. He's got a good turn of foot. And I love both of his wins. Numbers are rising with every start. He is 8-1 in the morning line. And that's why I'm picking. It's a gamble, obviously. He's got to prove himself at this level, but I'll take 8-1 to gamble that this lightly raced colt trained by Ryan Lynch is going to produce another forward move. And I know he'll get the trip, and some of the others might not. So Dashman, based on this win at Kentucky Downs, I think he's a legitimate contender. And if I can get 8-1, all the better.
Let's go back and take a look at that win. Larry Colmus with the call.
And Dashman is second on the outside. Right behind them, British Isles and King Doro, and down toward the rail, Copper Missile, past the 16th pole, still Vesture and Dashman. Dashman dashes by and pulls away. Dashman and Declan Cannon over Vesture.
You know, we call them handicapping puzzles a lot. It might be a cliche term, but they really are puzzles, right? You're trying to put them together. And you and I see this puzzle exactly the same, but we went with different horses. We're both looking at the favorites in here and the horses who are established stakes horses and thinking, am I on 3/8? Do they have that finishing kick like Carson's Run out of a Henny Hughes mare? Can't go a mile and 3/8 in my mind. Maybe if it happens. Deterministic out of a Spikestown mare, mile and 3/8. I don't know what the finish on that one. We know Legend of Time, like you said, it's kind of lacked that killer instinct late. So I went with another class riser off of 2 straight wins. I just went with El Razine in here. It's Irad Ortiz and Todd Pletcher. You're probably going to get better value because of the connections with your runner on Dashman. Brian Lynch and Manny Franco won't take the same kind of money, but we're in the same boat. We're just using different oars to row it, Jeff. I think, you know, we both see this race kind of similarly, and we're trying to find a horse who's in good form that we think will get the mile on 3/8. And by English Channel out of a Kitten's Joy mare, same thing. Pedigree, rising form, and we don't trust the others.
I mean, they're brothers, aren't they? I mean, they're not brothers in a sense, but they're the same horse, right?
They are the same horse. Exactly.
Race, bred to run all day, getting better with every race, and with the kind of style that should work very well, though. I mean, he's 7-2, El Razine. My horse is 8-1. But if I'm playing any kind of pick 3 or whatever, they're both on the ticket. I promise you that. You know, so, and I'm again trying to beat some of the other horses. And like I said, if Legend of Time beats me, do I really care at 2-1 in the morning line? I gotta
let him have it at that point, right?
So yeah, I mean, I think that, and I'll box him in an exact. That could really pay well if you can get the favorites out of there. Carson's Run, as you mentioned, I like him, but I don't know whether he's a 1-run middle distance horse or whether he can kind of, you know, stay it out with going farther. So again, I mean, if they win, they win, and I don't care. I can move on to the next one. But 2 good, decent price horses, El Razine at 7-2, which is still good, and then Dashman at 8-1. That's what I'm going to do.
Let's box them up. 2 brothers from another mother, as they say. Yeah. We'll go with those 2 in race number 5. Next up, Belmont at the Big A. We roll right into race number 6. If you want to play daily doubles, let it roll into the 6th race. Good field size to work with. In this one, it's the Belmont Turf Sprint. And we talk about the Jockey Club Derby Invitational being one of the newer races on the NYRA circuit. The Belmont Turf Sprint's rather new as well. Only started in 2016. They've run this race 8 times. 5 of the winners are from barns that are back in this race. So there's trainers who've been aiming for this race over and over again. We see Mike Trombetta here. We see George Weaver here. We see Christophe Clement in this spot. Clement won the first 3 editions of this race back in 16, 17, and 18. He's got Senbai in here. Jeff, when I looked at this race, to me, it looked like nothing better on the outside. It's just kind of not quite gotten there in the last 2 when I thought he should have in the Select and also the DeHaas, but I don't see a lot of excuses for him in this particular spot because the top horses in New York and the turf sprint scene have departed. They're down at Keeneland this weekend, or Cogburn is waiting to the Breeders' Cup now, and he's finished with his preps. This race is kind of open for somebody who's been, you know, maybe just below the very best in New York. I've got to think nothing better would fit in here. He was a good winner at Churchill back in June. Who did you like in this spot?
Well, to me, he's the one to beat. There's no question. Nothing better is. I originally had him on top, and I said, yeah, well, at 6-1 with Pratt, George Weaver, I'm going to go with Outlaw Kid, not even knowing if he's going to run in the race because he's cross-entered in Canada in the Vice region, which, by the way, he's won the last 2 years. I don't know if there's any bonus if you win the same race up in Canada 3 years in a row, but Outlaw Kid's up there. I mean, I don't know where he is, but he's entered there and he could show up. So if he doesn't run in this race, if he decides to go to Canada, then absolutely nothing better would be my top selection. But at 6-1, if he does run here, coming off a really nice win, I don't know. I mean, to me, I think Outlaw Kid is probably the right one based on this really impressive victory. But Outlaw Kid, to me, like I say, numbers-wise, he's fast enough. He's also 2 out of 3 lifetime over the New York course. So I think Outlaw Kid certainly fits with these, and I'll put him on top if he runs.
George Weaver looking for back-to-back wins in this race. He won it last year with today's flavor. That's the Belmont Turf Sprint. Outlaw Kid cross-entered in the Nearctic Stakes at Woodbine. So let's go back and take a look at his last win in the Vice region. If you get him at Woodbine or if you get him here, at least you'll know who he is a little bit more here. Get a chance to see him in action last out.
2 lengths, Light the Lamp tapped up. Outlaw Kid started to finish on really well down the outside. Light the Lamp coming with Outlaw Kid after Rock Crest, who got away. Then Forester's Fortune, and running up on the outside, Outlaw Kid has gone to the front. Forester's Fortune down the outside late, but Outlaw Kid has the break in the Vice region. The defending champ goes on to win again, and Forester's Fortune 2.5 away got second.
Let's go to the Frizette Stakes next up at Belmont Park. Belmont, it's a big A. I keep wanting to say Belmont Park, but we're not going to run at Belmont Park for another year or so until the construction projects are over. Last year's winner of the Frizette Stakes was just FYI. She went on to win the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. And Jeff Siegel, this is a little trivia time here, but we're talking about the Frizette. You can win a bar bet with somebody, so I'm going to give you this one to use down the line. But which race has produced the most Breeders' Cup winners all time in any division?
I don't know.
The Frizette. That's what we're talking about here.
So you were trying to lead me right to the water.
I led you to the water, and I just almost waterboarded you and stuck your face in it, and you still didn't get it. But the Frizette Stakes, we'll see if this year's edition will produce another Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies winner. That task got considerably harder, though, after early scratches have come out in the media, because we lose Paradise City out of this edition of the Frizette, and we also lose Sense of Parole out of this race. Sense of Parole, the most dominant 2-year-old filly winner at Saratoga this summer, would have been a heavy favorite in the Frizette. So she's not in here. Safi's horse Paradise City's not in here. So you lose Brown, you lose Joseph. Listen to the trainers we've got in the field here for the Frizette Stakes. Grade 1 company, $400,000. Danny Gargan, Safi Joseph, Brendan Walsh, Jenna Antonucci, Jorge Abreu, Gary Contessa, Jamie Ness, and Flint Stites. The former two look more like a pan-national with Ness and Stites. This is not a blue blood edition of the Frizette. Doesn't mean a good horse couldn't come out of it, though. They're just going to come from the other side of the tracks, if you will. Who do you like in this Frizette Stakes that obviously with the scratches looks a lot different than it did when the entries first came out?
There's a filly in here that really caught my eye, trained by Gary Contessa. They only gave $40,000 for in the 2-year-old in training sale at Timonium. And these big guys don't make many mistakes, but this one got through. Apparently, another cliche, daughter of Volatile. I don't know, maybe she didn't pass the vet at the sale, or maybe she doesn't stand correctly. But I can tell you this is a very good filly, even though when she broke her maiden, she did so in one of those restricted RNA type of races where you couldn't have brought more money than $50,000. So another cliche, she had the rail in that maiden race at Saratoga, didn't break from the rail, rushed up on the inside, and produced a bunch of produced an early move that usually takes them away from. I mean, you pay your price with that. But instead of folding up like I fully expected her to do so, she just kept going and actually won under wraps. And the number wasn't bad. And since then, she's got a bullet work. I mean, let's take a look at this race, another cliche, and tell me if you think that she's as good as maybe I think she is, with the understanding that, keep in mind, she did not break from the rail at all.
Here's Frank Miramati with the call.
It is far back there at the top of the stretch. Another Cliche turns for home with a 3-length lead. Make it 4. Another Cliche pouring it on inside the final 1/8 of a mile. Divine Works was no match, and neither was anyone else. A dazzling debut after an awkward start, and Junior Alvarado puts the brakes on as another Cliche trounces them, maybe 9. Divine Works.
9 plus, in fact. Final margin of victory, 9.5 lengths. Alvarado rides back here for Gary Contessa. The only other horse in this race that gave me any interest after the scratches is one named Pondering. This is a well-bred, hard-spun colt for Godolphin, a homebred. Brendan Walsh's first-time starter at Ellis Park looked like the goods. It was a really nice debut win on a fast track. Then they thought enough to take this horse straight to the spin-away. It was only 5-1 in the Grade 1 spin-away at Saratoga, and didn't pick up a hoof at all. Maybe just didn't like the sloppy track. It was wet that day at Saratoga, just completely empty and ran terrible. If we draw a line through the race and figure it took nothing out of her, she got beat 23.5 lengths, so she wasn't running very hard to the wire. Maybe Pondering can bounce back in this particular spot. Workouts since then, I don't know. They've worked her on the turf. Maybe she's got some foot problems. I'm not quite sure what we're doing with her, but she is by Hard Spun out of a Street Sense mare. Hard Spuns do well on turf and dirt. Maybe they were trying to keep their options open to see what might come about for her as a potential turf horse. But I give Pondering a little bit of a shot in here. We probably don't get any kind of price because Flavian Pratt's riding, and he's been so good in the stakes races. And with the scratches and no big name trainers in this race, jocks who are going to take money in here include Pratt, obviously, maybe at the 4 of the jocks who are going to take money, because Irad Ortiz, of course, lost his mount with the scratches, sends a parole. So probably not a good value play. We're looking for a big rebound, but I thought Pondering had a shot in here.
Yeah, I mean, as a handicapper, if I see a poor run on over a muddy track, I draw a line through it, because I've seen too many horses who can't handle mud look bad, and then they come back and run in their best race. And if Pondering were to come back and repeat the quality of her maiden win, absolutely, she's a major contender, especially with the scratches coming up as they are. So yes, definitely a contender. And I don't, the morning line is all out of kilter because of the scratches. The 3 to 5 is out. So I don't know what these prices are actually going to be ending up being, but I'd be curious to see who the public makes favored, whether it's Pondering or another Cliche or somebody else, maybe the Queen's MG, who had won a pair of stakes, and then she flopped in the mud, so you can give her an excuse there. So interesting addition to the Frizette, and we'll see. I'd be curious to see how fast they run and what kind of race it turns out to be.
Yeah, Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies division gets defined in the next 24, 48 hours, because today the Alcibiades at Keeneland, and then on Saturday we've got the Frizette in New York, and then, of course, on the West Coast, still to talk about on this podcast, the Oakleaf Stakes. So we're going to find out the 3 major preps of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies each and every year. They're all coming up over the next 24 hours or so. So a lot to make out of that. Let's go to the final race that we're going to handicap on Saturday at Belmont at the Big A. It's the $500,000 Champagne Stakes. Jeff, we talked a little bit about the new kids on the block, the Jockey Club Derby, the Belmont Turf Sprint. They're all of like 7, 8 years old. They've been running the Champagne since 1867. So step aside, young kids, and let the grandfather of the Naira circuit here this weekend come to the fore. The Champagne Stakes, one of the key preps each and every year towards the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. The one caveat to this, and the Frizette has had no problem producing big-time results, even though they're 1-turn miles. And then, of course, they're going to be prep races towards 2-turn races in the Breeders' Cup this year. The Juvenile and Juvenile Fillies, both at a mile and a 16th around 2 turns at Del Mar. So these horses still won't get the 2-turn test in the Champagne towards the Breeders' Cup, but this race has certainly held its own over the years. And we've got one in here who's pretty well established to this point, as well established as you can be in the first week of October of the 2-year-old season. That's Chancer McPatrick. He broke his maiden at Saratoga in Maiden Special Company. He came back and won the Grade 1 Hopeful, the biggest race run so far this year for the 2-year-old colts. Let's go back and take a look at the Hopeful and get your thoughts on the chances of Chancer McPatrick in doubling down here and winning the Champagne Stakes.
Who's been head-to-head with Menti at the top of the stretch. These two will come to the 8th pole right together. Incentive Paid dives down towards that very familiar inside for his run. Ferocious did not fire his best shot, but Chancer McPatrick did, and he's coming fast on the outside. They're past the 16th pole, and Chancer McPatrick, Ferocious comes alive, but Chancer McPatrick proves best in the hopeful, defeating Ferocious. Incentive Pay.
Ferocious we'll get to see at Keeneland on Saturday in the Breeders' Futurity. So this could be a very key race this year's Hopeful Stakes. Of course, Forte and some good horses have come out of that in recent years and gone on to good things. So what do you expect from the hopeful alum and the hopeful winner, Chancer McPatrick, as he stretches out just from 7 furlongs to a mile?
Yeah, but it's still, as you pointed out, a one-turn race. So it's basically the same type of race. And Chancer McPatrick, who won that race, despite getting fanned out into the stretch, it was an amazing race. He didn't break. He threw his head up in the air and looked like he was eliminated. Actually, he was dead last early. Still beats a good field, and he did it with a big figure, 88 Beyer number. First crop from McKinsey out of a mare by Bernardini. No reason why the extra furlong, especially a one-turn race, won't be an issue. And
right.
Not only that, but that outside draw allows him, assuming he comes out cleanly, that allows him to kind of settle in wherever he wants to be and then produces a good right run. He's 6-5 in the morning line. It's a very, very talented colt. And I think he's going to win, but you're not going to make a lot of money with him. He's 6-5, probably go lower than that. But I do like a colt to complete the exacta, so maybe we can make money that way.
All right.
Vekoma Rides, I think we featured him as a future star when he won his debut at Aqueduct over this track. He won by 5. It could have been by 10. He just kind of eased up at the end. Loved the way he did it. And again, going from 6 furlongs to a one-turn mile, he's not going to confuse him any. He's going to go out there and say, I know how to do this. And he's 8-1. Do I think he can beat Chancer McPatrick? I doubt it. It's not so much because I don't think Vekoma Rides is good, but because I think Chancer McPatrick is fantastic. But he certainly can run second. So if you want to make money with this race, how about a 10-6 exacta with Chancer McPatrick over Vekoma Rides? Another colt that I do believe is going to step forward as he gets more experience. But boy, he didn't get much play in his debut. But man, I'm telling you, this is a good colt. He really is, and from a very, very nice young freshman stallion who's getting runners.
Yeah, you mentioned that first crop sire McKenzie, first crop sire here with the Vekoma. They've really done well and a big future with both of them and their offspring. A big immediate future could be laying in Grade 1 company here in the Champagne Stakes and then on to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile with a chance to compete for favoritism. That Breeders' Cup Juvenile division, that also will get all of its definition essentially over the next 24 to 48 hours because the Champagne's the first one we talked about. Later on, we will talk about the race at Santa Anita, the American Pharaoh, and then Saturday's race at Keeneland, the Breeders' Futurity, will also give us a little bit of definition in there. Ferocious, the horse who you saw on video, and the hopeful who just ran second to Chancer McPatrick. To me, clearly the horse to beat in the Breeders' Futurity on Saturday at Keeneland. It'll be my top pick and a horse that I'm going to lean on heavily in there. So, we're going to know a lot more about the Breeders' Cup Juvenile here coming up in very short time. Let's change gears now from New York to the West Coast, California on Saturday. Once again, want to remind you before Saturday's card, if you're playing Southern California racing, don't forget today, Friday, Pick 6 carryover, 83,900 plus in the Pick 6 at Santa Anita. Get Jeff Siegel's analysis at the First Bet and Express Bet websites in the blog section. Be sure to check that out. We go to the stakes schedule on Saturday at Santa Anita. It's going to get underway in Saturday's third race. Mile and the 16th, Grade 2 company here. It's the Oak Leaf Stakes. This is a very important prep historically towards the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. And Jeff, I like to say when the Breeders' Cup's in the East, I like the East. And when it's in the West, I like the West. I think there's a little home court advantage for 2-year-olds because of the experience factor and inexperience factor, right? A lot of the horses who are going to have to come West are doing something completely out of their realm and out of their norm. For the Southern California horses, it's going to be kind of a home game. So I think from a Breeders' Cup scouting report situation, I think you really want to watch these 2-year-old races in Southern California this weekend. Hopefully hopefully you can pick something out of there that will put you on one towards the big race at Del Mar coming up on November 1st. So Oakleaf race number 3, it's the Bob Baffert Invitational, if you will. He's got several in here. He's got Tenma, winner of the Del Mar Debutante. They will go around 2 turns for the first time here, though, in the Oakleaf. Do you like Tenma stretching out, or are we going a different direction?
I am not that high on Tenma. I mean, she won her first start. She didn't get much play. You very rarely see a Bob Baffert first-time starter, 2-year-old filly at Del Mar with talent go off at 6-1 because she doesn't train that great. She won. I'll give credit for it. Comes back and she wins the Del Mar Debutante, one of those fast early, slow late type of races that maybe flattered her, a little bit. I mean, again, it's hard to knock her, but when you've got 8 horses in the race and 4 of them are trained by Bob Baffert, the first handicapping factor I use is, okay, who's Juan Hernandez riding? Because he can ride anyone he wants. Now, he rides non-compliant, who's a really nice filly. I mean, again, she won her debut, but she did it with authority. I like the way she won that race. Notice that the runner-up was far in front of the 3rd horse. She trains well. She's bred to run long. The outside box going 1 mile and 1/16 in a 2-turn race here is not a detriment at all. In fact, I like it because you can drop over and you can sit. You don't have to worry about doing this to get out of the gate. Just sit there, and then kick on with it, just like she did in the sprint. Trained well since that race. So I think non-compliant of the 4 Bafferts is going to win. I don't know what price she'll be, but based on what I saw, I like her.
She got some education in that race, even though it was a 6-horse field. She was on the inside. Then she kind of had to take cover there and watch her tip out and go. This is a really professional victory. We'll go back and pick this one up with Trevor Denman at the head of the stretch at Del Mar, non-compliant.
Stride for stride. Margarita Girl on the outside. Usha down at the rail. Non-compliant right there third, and non-compliant now comes to take them on. Bougie Beach behind that. At the top of the lane now. Here's non-compliant in the black cap on the grandstand side. Margarita Girl goes with him. Usha's dropped out of it, and it's non-compliant striking the front now and starting to pull clear. Non-compliant and Juan Hernandez to win this one going away. Non-compliant won it. Margarita Girl finished up second.
Bob Baffert, a 12-time winner of the Oakleaf, but he hasn't won it the last 3 years. What have you done for us lately in the Oakleaf? But again, he's got 4 of them in there. Jeff is going to follow the money as Juan Hernandez is leaving a trail of bills behind him, maybe to tell you which way to go in this race. Non-compliant, Jeff's top pick there in the Oakleaf. We go next up from race 3 to race 7 on the card at Santa Anita. It's the Chillingworth Stakes. Grade 3 race here, 6.5 furlongs on the main track. This is a prep towards the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. The favorite in the Filly and Mare Sprint divisions, down to 2 horses probably. Ways and Means made her case for it last week in the Gallant Bloom in Southern California. Now, the likely favorite, especially if she gets through this event, is Sweet Azteca. She has done absolutely nothing wrong, Jeff. She's only been beaten once in 6 starts, and she's just been a runaway freight train of late. The Chillingworth will give her a threat, though, because Hope Road is awfully good, and this is the first time those 2 are going to match up.
Yeah, this is interesting. I don't know whether Bob Baffert, who trains Hope Road, I don't know if this is the race he was pointing for. He's got an owner here that kind of calls the shots, And I understand the idea here. If you run well in the Chillingworth, maybe you can come back in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. And why wouldn't you want to do that if you had her? I mean, her mother, this filly's mother won it, Marley's Freedom. So I think she'll probably be second early, which I don't think you want to be battling Sweet Azteca. She'll chew you out. So I think it's going to be an exact 3/2 if Hope Road, in fact, does run. But Sweet Azteca is, and I sort of surprised that she's running in this race. I don't know why you wouldn't just train her up to the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah.
She can clearly run well fresh. But maybe it's one of these situations where McCarthy figures, I got another month. I don't know whether I want to keep honing on her. I can probably win this race and get a tightener in her, which means I won't have to train her hard leading up to the race. So, but if you haven't seen Sweet Azteca, this race at Del Mar is pretty much her in a nutshell. I mean, she's one of these fillies that is quick enough out of the gate like a quarter horse to get the lead. She switches off midway, and then you tripped her and she opens up again. And she's a very, very hard filly to beat because of that two-move kind of ability that she has. But Hope Road's pretty good. And I think it was not bad either is One Magic Filly on numbers. She's pretty fast. This is a much stronger race than I thought it would be. But it's still you still have to go through Sweet Azteca.
Let's go back and take a look at her last victory in the Rancho Bernardo at Del Mar, the site of this year's Breeders' Cup.
Sweet Azteca asked to go, does so willingly. And it's Sweet Azteca just gets a tap on the neck here from Flavian Pratt. And this one's pretty much all over. Sweet Azteca, just plain too good for them. Sweet Azteca, a scintillating performance. Kismosa might just get up for second. Anywho is right there.
You know, her third race of the form cycle was when she won the Beholder Mile and beat the superb route mare Adair Manor. So this is the third race of her form cycle. I don't know why you would want that to come before the Breeders' Cup. It seems to me like the prudent thing to do would have been wait for the Breeders' Cup, especially not run in this 100 grander where winners share it's $60,000. I
don't get it.
I don't get it why they're in this particular race. Hopefully she has an easy go of it because you mentioned there's a couple fast challengers in there that might make her do a little bit more than you want to do 4 or 5 weeks out from the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Sprint. The connections of Ways and Means might be smiling at the situation that's brewing for them. They've got a filly who's really getting good at the right time, and they may be squeezing a lemon one extra time here that they don't need to. Trainer Michael McCarthy and connections with Sweet Azteca. Let's see. She's one of my favorite horses in training, though. She's really good. But if the goal is to win the Breeders' Cup in a month's time, I don't know that the best way to do it is going through this race on Saturday at Santa Anita. Now, as for the filly and mare turf division, we'll see the key local prep on Saturday at Santa Anita for the West Coast horses. Of course, we're heading to Del Mar for this one, but it's the 1 1/4 Rodeo Drive at Santa Anita on Saturday. They will run a 1 3/8 this year for the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. So this race is actually an 1/8 of a mile, 220 yards shorter than the main event coming up this year at a 1 3/8 for the Filly and Mare Turf. Rodeo Drive starts on the downhill turf course, and you always hear people say if a horse is ever going to get a 1 1/4 on the turf, this is the trip that you'll do it because the first part of the race is down the hill and it's not as taxing on the horses. So how do you see it shaking out, Jeff, in this field of 7?
Well, if you look at the race, I mean, the pace scenario looks incredibly soft for a filly who doesn't really need that edge to win, but she's got it anyway, and she'll take advantage of it. We're talking about Ice Cream, You Scream, 8 to 5 on the morning line, tackling older horses after winning the Del Mar Oaks. What's just so impressive to me about Ice Cream, You Scream is she's literally like driving a car, because in that last race, she had an inside draw. She took control early. It looked like she was going to be on the lead every step of the way. Some filly made this premature move on the outside. So instead of going with her midway down the backstretch, Barrio said, "You want to go? Go. You know, I'm just going to sit here." Drop back. You see this in harness racing, but you don't see it in thoroughbred. Drop back to sit second, and then he asked her to re-brake at the quarter pole, and she exploded. So handy, so versatile, so talented. And again, you pointed out, maybe she don't want to run a 1 1/4, but on this course she will. And out of a mare by Cozine, I mean, she's only had 4 starts. Who knows how far she really wants to run? Beautiful mover, fast on figures, improved with every start, and gifted a lone F type of trip here. I mean, this is a good field. I mean, Sunset Glory is a pretty good filly, but and Aspen Grove's not bad either. But Ice Cream, You Scream. The question is she going to win this race, as I expected she will, in such a manner that they will try her in a mini marathon distance? I mean, it's a possibility.
Right.
So I'm looking forward very much to see this Phil D'Amato trained filly go out and do her thing, and then we'll figure out where she belongs after that.
This is bold because she could go to Keeneland for the Queen Elizabeth II Challenge Cup in a week or two's time and face just 3-year-old fillies for a similar amount of money. I believe that race goes, well, actually for about 3 times the money. I think the QE2 is about $600,000. race just against 3-year-old fillies. But if you do that, you're probably out of contention for the Breeders' Cup because, you're getting too close to the race. So this tells me they've got Breeders' Cup intentions with I Scream, You Scream. And after watching her in the Del Mar Oaks, maybe they're onto the right path.
I Scream, You Scream has come right back at Whiskey Decision and in fact has gone on by. On the outside, Maduro is running a big one too. They are homeward bound. I Scream, You Scream now gets the lead. Maduro on the outside running a big one. Inside of that, Zona Verde. They come for home. I Scream, You Scream, hanging on tenaciously. Maduro can get her. I Scream, You Scream, and Hector Berrios have won it. Second place will go to Maduro.
Now, she takes on older horses. That's a new challenge, like you had already mentioned, and this will be the longest race of her career. We will see if I Scream, You Scream is up to the test. And the other thing that's different about this race, too, that it's not just 3-year-olds that she's facing. It's not just West Coast horses. There are 3 shippers from the East coming here, surprising for this time, not waiting for the Breeders' Cup, but coming out early. Be Your Best comes in from Saratoga for Safi Joseph off of Saratoga race. Beach Bomb last race at Monmouth Park for Graham Motion. And then Aspen Grove for Jack Sisterson coming out of races at Saratoga as well. So we get a little regional barometer and see, are the East Coast horses just stronger in the filly and mare turf division? They're not sending their best out west. So if these 3 are pretty competitive, then that the West won't compete with the best from the East or from Europe, probably when we get to the Breeders' Cup. But if she's able to get it done here, I think you're going to see I Scream, You Scream back at Del Mar for the Breeders' Cup filly mare turf. I think they'll take their swing at it if she can advance here through the Rodeo Drive. Let's go next and finally to the American Pharaoh Stakes. It's our final handicapping destination this weekend on the First Call podcast. The American Pharaoh, Grade 1 company here. This race has had about 12 names over the years. It's the key 2-year-old prep on the West Coast for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And at 1 1/16, it's the first 2-turn stakes test for horses on the West Coast. Bob Baffert has won this race 12 times. Sounds familiar, same as he's won the Oakleaf. But where he's lost the Oakleaf the last 3, he's won the last 3 in this particular race. Corniche, Muth, and I'm forgetting somebody else in the middle there. But Muth was the winner of this race last year. The American Pharaoh, and of course, Muth will go on to run second in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile fillies to Fierceness, or in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, not fillies, but Muth last year, second in the Juvenile out of this race. They'll head to Del Mar after this, but first stop is at Santa Anita. Jeff, how do you see the American Pharaoh?
Well, we got McKinsey Street as the 9-5 morning line favorite. Inside speed for sure. The Crossick, 2 sprints and a stretch out for this Tim Yachting trained colt. And he's going to be tough, no question about it. But Getaway Car intrigues me, and here's why. I think he's the best Baffert, and again, Hernandez riding him. Won his first 2 starts on the lead, wearing blinkers, looked good. And then last time out in the Del Mar Futurity, he was down on the inside, under pressure, 21-4, 44-1, and kind of waved the white flag in a disappointing run. But now I think you're going to see a much better version, stretching out for the first time. Son of Curlin absolutely should handle the extra ground. Yeah. The blinkers off angle is strong. The outside draw, I think, will allow Hernandez to not have to send them out of there. Just grab them, sit second or third, in hand, into the bridle. Don't ask him to run. And then that alone wouldn't be enough for me to pick him. But this in the dark workout. See, our cameras, they get up at 5 in the morning. I don't, but this is in the dark. He's the colt on the inside, and he's under wraps here in company with Emerald Bay, who was also in this race. He won his maiden by 5. That's a pretty good colt that he is going to leave for dead. And you can see him breezing through the lane. Going to go in 59 and 1 and gallop out in 12. This colt really responded to the idea of taking a hold, blinkers off, relaxing early, switching off, and then accelerating through the lane and then galloping out to the clubhouse turn. I think you're going to see a much better version of Getaway Car than you saw in his last race because his style is going to change. He's not going to have to, like he did from the rail last time, do this, get out of the gate. Do this, grab, sit, stalk, and then sit off of McKinsey Street and go after him at the quarter pole and do in the race what you did in the dark last week. And I think he's got a heck of a chance to not only win this race, to go on to bigger and better things. He won his first 2 starts by himself. He looked like he was the goods, and I think he has a chance to bounce back.
And not that Juan Hernandez needs any practice, But don't you see this as like the exact same trip as the Oakleaf? He's got the outside filly there, non-compliant for Baffert, and like what you're talking about, the chance to kind of just see what's going on there and get into position into the clubhouse turn and then finish up after being a little bit patient. It just kind of seems like he'll get the first shot to do it in the Oakleaf, and then he'll get to run almost the same thing back on rewind. If he's got the horse to do it, of course, that's it. They are not machines and it isn't a video game. But if the horses come to him and they can work out the same kind of trips, you could almost see this happening and setting up the same way twice.
Yeah,
I want to talk about some races on the card. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean,
let's go ahead and talk about the Keeneland races coming up on Saturday. Okay. 5 stakes races on the card at Keeneland. Not a lot to me in terms of creativity across the way in those stakes races. I think there's some shorter prices that we can kind of lean on. I think Ferocious at 8-5, 9-5 is going to be the horse to beat in the Breeders' Futurity. One horse I am excited to see, and I think we'll get a medium range price amongst the 5 stakes races, is Kukuli. This is the horse in the $1.25 million Turf Mile. It's not the deepest race edition of that race. Carl Spackler's the favorite in that spot. Then he's been good, but I don't think Carl Spackler's world class. Kukuli is the half brother to Frankel, and they think this horse just hasn't lived up to it quite yet, but they think the talent is there. Imagine the breeding value of this horse being a half to Frankel if he can get a grade 1 win. And if they don't think they can get a group 1 win in Europe, to come to America and do it in front of all the breeders, I think he's well meant coming here. So I think Kukuli is a horse in the Turf Mile that you want to watch. Frankie Dettori rides. That's the feature race on the card, the 10th on the program Saturday at Keeneland amongst 5 stakes races. You can get my analysis for Keeneland at Keeneland.com. And also, if you follow me on Substack, jeremyplonk.substack.com. You can get my Keeneland analysis sent to your email inbox each and every day. So for me tomorrow amongst the stakes races, Kukuli is the one I'm watching in the Turf Mile. And we'll see if that half brother of Frankel can get it done. Sunday at Keeneland, 3 stakes on the card, including the Spinster Stakes. Spinster, of course, features Idiomatic. If you've been trying to beat Idiomatic, she's been a little vulnerable. She got beat last time by Raging Sea. Those two are separated on Sunday. You got Raging Sea running in the Beldame at Belmont against the short field. And then you got Idiomatic running the Spinster on Sunday at Keeneland against a short field. They go their separate ways, and they'll probably both punch out victories, Jeff. So I don't see a ton of creativity in the stakes races at Keeneland. Good betting all weekend, but I don't see the stakes as shaking out as anything too wild.
You're right, but I'm going to be watching closely because I am very high on Ferocious. Even though he got beat last time out, he looked like he was done at the 8th pole and still re-rallied and got beat by obviously a very good Colton Chanton Patrick. So from the rail at Keeneland, he's got a chance to put on a show. And if he runs as well as I think he's going to run in the Breeders' Futurity, then he's going to get a lot of action on Breeders' Cup Day. That's the way I'm really going to run. As far as I don't know how good this half brother to Frankel is, Kukuli, but I do think he is going to very much, based on his form, appreciate top of the ground. And if it's not going to rain there, you might see the best of Kukuli there because his form overseas looks like that's why he's here because I think he needs it firm. But some tremendous racing, and it's like, I don't know, this is like playoff racing. It's not the championship, but it's playoffs, and everybody needs to run at least pretty darn good, if not better, to warrant the next step. So not only is it good gambling, and if you pick your spots, but on 3 fronts, New York, Kentucky, and here in California, this is playoff racing. I can't wait. And even today, Friday, as we record this, it's almost like it's a Saturday today. With all the good racing, and then tomorrow really is Saturday. So just fantastic, and I can't wait for it to start.
Yeah, a couple stakes today in New York, the stakes at Keeneland, and the carryover in the pick 6 at Santa Anita. I want to remind you, too, the late pick 4 each day at Keeneland when you bet with First Bet and Express Bet. 1 million first rewards points hit and split in the late pick 4 every day of the meet, all 17 days. So if you're going to play the late pick 4 at Keeneland, and you probably are, play it with First Bet and Express Bet because you get your pari-mutuel winnings plus your share of 1 million rewards points. Those are redeemed for cash in your account, for handicapping products, however you want to to use it, but extra chance and extra bonus for playing the pick four if you hit it with First Bet and Express Bets. So the late pick four each day. Scott Shapiro's got his analysis for Saturday's late pick four at Keeneland for Saturday. Frank Caruli's got the late pick four handled for today in the Fridays with Frank blog. So you get a little help with that million-point hit and split from Frank and Scott over the next couple of days. We'll get some picks from Eddie Olczyk on the website coming up on Saturday for Santa Anita for his hat trick. So be sure to check that out. And the harness players, big weekend with the Kentucky Futurity coming up this weekend. Al Samaglia will have analysis of that one. And if you like to play harness racing tonight, Fraser Downs in British Columbia. Bet 50, get 10. So a 20% rebate essentially on that harness action tonight at Fraser Downs in British Columbia. If you need picks there, Dawn Lupel. A lot of people know Dawn from her days at Woodbine. She's got picks up on the website for you for Fraser Downs tonight where she now works. So take advantage of that. Take advantage of all the opportunities you have playing around the country. Shop around. There's a lot of great racing. And the Arc de Triomphe, of course, offered this weekend with First Bet and Express Bet on Sunday morning. I think post for the Arc is somewhere right around 10 a.m. Eastern. So check that out on Sunday. Jeff, we're going to be back on Tuesday with our recap show. It's official. I don't know how you're going to pick just 5 topics next week.
Well, we'll have a lot of opinions for sure, all squished into 5,
Yeah.
But we're going to learn a lot, and it's going to be fun, especially with the 2-year-olds, both the fillies and the colts. We're going to learn a lot in that division as well, and like I say, we'll watch those races in France on Sunday, and there's always going to be a few that will come over. And by the way, I don't know if you saw this tweet, but it was a shipping company from Japan who says they're bringing. The tweet said they're bringing 19 horses from Japan to the Breeders' Cup. Man, have mercy on the morning line maker. How do I evaluate that for? But the good news is, by the way, I can't tell you how much I rely on the video library at ExpressBet, because not only we have all the races to evaluate from the states, but they got all the European races as well. Right. Even if it's a maiden race somewhere, it's up there. So if you can't watch a race, I know you feel this way as well, Jeremy. If you can't watch it, you really can't be sure what you're playing. But if you can watch a horse travel and watch them move and watch them run, whether it's here or overseas. I can't tell you how. I can't even imagine how I got around without this stuff.
Yeah.
Back in the 90s before we even had ExpressBet or any of these ADWs. So it adds a lot of work to the task at hand, but it's worth it. And so I got to get my Japanese charts out, because I think I'm going to be faced with some very live runners overseas from there come Breeders' Cup Day.
I can tell you this, it sure beats VCR taping of all the replay shows each night from various racetracks and then trying to rewind and find the race that you're looking for to watch back a replay. That's how we used to do it, kids.
That's how I did it. Days. I had tape from New York, all the replay shows. I was going through some of my junk, and I saw a video cassette at VHS. It said Aqueduct March 2004.
Yeah.
I don't think I need that anymore.
I even called it VCR. It's been so long. You put the VHS tape in the VCR. You can't even remember how many iterations of technology ago it was.
Exactly.
We're going to be back on Tuesday, and we're going to be high-tech and ready to go. Have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll see you then.